Hi, I'm Christopher Middlemas. I am the chairman of this club, and this is our new manager.
Hi, my name is Wint, and I am the new manager for the season.
So Chris, would you like to introduce us to your teaching philosophy?
Yes, Chassis 2015 says teaching philosophies are moral guides that help individuals and institutes design, deliver and use curricula and learning materials and engage in various practices associated with teaching and learning. Teaching philosophies can come in all shapes and sizes, like a poem from John Yowie. Teaching is a very important role to society. With learners spending up to 15 years in education, the role of a teacher needs to be to inspire the learners. I hope to incorporate this into my teaching philosophy. My first primary point is motivation. Keller 2006 developed a theory which has suggested that motivation consists of the amount of effort a person is willing to exert in the pursuit of a goal. In essence, Keller is saying that if learners are willing to put in any effort into their goals, then these goals aren't going to be reached. Taylor 2008 believes that physical education teachers can play a major influence in a student's self-determination, and ipso facto enhance or undermine intrinsic motivation through the applied motivational strategies. I hope to do this through some strategies like active learning. Secondly, and arguably the most important part of my teaching philosophy, is creating a safe and encouraging environment for all learners. This means that everyone feels inclusive and gives the time and the ability to grow into young adults. This can then also be linked to their development of their personal skills for their future endeavours. I'm hoping that these skills will develop through their personal lives, helping them in social scenarios, but hopefully will push them if they decide to progress onto higher education or help them to be able to progress in the world of the working life.
So Alex, what is your philosophy and what's your personal views on it?
So, first of all, my philosophy is that of Jeff Petty's. This is active learning. So basically what active learning is, first of all, is an umbrella term for pedagogies focusing basically on student activity and engagement, as mentioned by Prince 2004. My view on it personally is that it's a good way on engaging learners, especially as from my experience in teaching, or from learning, in a sports science environment, a lot of the lessons involve key terms, a lot of data, and it can be considered as quite a tedious kind of course. Therefore, for someone who is 16 and 19, to be engaged in the active learning style is a much better process way of getting it through to them. I find it's also important as for me also to work with something that's evidence-based, coming from a sports science background, obviously Chris as well, who has a sporting background. We usually work with everything that's evidence-based, whether it's from performance, injury and science. And looking at the vast amount of literature on active learning, I can see that there is a lot of evidence there that suggests that it works.
Chris, how do you feel you can achieve this?
Okay, using personal standards 3, 5, 11, 13, 14, 15 and 16 to achieve these. My philosophy points above, I aim to help and distinguish the needs of each learner and create lessons and activities which help them.
Alex, what evidence do you have that can suggest it works?
Well, for me myself, what evidence I've shown is from Marzano et al. Using Jeff Petty's active learning theory. From what they found in their evidence was a lot of specific activities that they use, such as graphic organisation, decisions, feedback, achieved higher grade percentage using this active learning style. And another recent study as well from Freeman et al. Also analysed the same active learning in undergraduates that were using technology, that were using maths, and that were also using science, which is all specific to my learner needs, as I'm going to be embedding English, of course, with professional standards 15 and 16. Incorporating these particular learning styles will help improve grade percentages by at least 6%. And compared to normal traditional styles of teaching, which shows and demonstrates in this theory that they're 1.5 times more probable to fail. So I find it's a good use of implementing my active learning to increase grade percentages.
Chris, what do you feel your role is as a teacher?
Well, my roles will vary as a teacher. I like to link this back with my philosophy of that I want to help learners achieve their personal goals. This can be used whilst I set my targets for each lesson using Bloom's taxonomy. As previously mentioned, motivation is a key point of my philosophy. I will need to be enthusiastic and keep the learners engaged. With sport and exercise science being a heavily practical-based subject, active learning will be key for me to keep the learners engaged. I can achieve this by keeping my knowledge up to date with the ever-changing sports science climate. Using current topics will also be integrated into my lessons. For example, with the 2018 Football World Cup coming up in Russia, I'll be using Russia's recent performance-enhancing drug scandal in both my research measures and psychology lessons. This will be asking learners to understand why performers still take performance-enhancing drugs, even though they are very much aware of the repercussions of using them. Professional Standards 8 and 9, active learning is also a major tool, as previously mentioned, needed in the sporting learning world. It has been well documented that active learning works. Various studies have helped find that this is to be true. Demirsa and Steinhardt both found that according to their results, it has been confirmed that active learning approach has a significant effect on the attitudes of students towards science lessons. So, linking back to Professional Standards 12 of my role as a teacher, my role as a teacher will consist of identifying every learner's needs. As a dyslexic myself, I am very aware that different coloured paper helps learners who have dyslexia. I will also ensure that any other learners who have special provisions will be provided for. This will give them the greatest chance of learning. I also find this out by asking for feedback from the learners. Also during lessons, I will make sure that all learners are adhering to all policies of the college. In a college environment, mutual respect is needed, and I aim to develop this between my learners and myself. I do apologise.
Alex, do you have experience using or analysing this philosophy? If so, does it work, and how does it relate to your subject?
That's a good question. First of all, how would I actually measure this? Well, going back to my previous statement, I'm going to be using Bloom's taxonomy as well. I find it's a great way of using cognitive processes to actually to get the learners to actually understand these particular processes, what I want from them, what I expect from them, and how I can actually get them to that particular learning objective. Evidence-based research as well, we're looking into consideration from our philosophy. So Derek et al. Conducted primary research using questionnaire to find students who used active learning, and they found that there was higher motivation in their students and their learners to actually achieve better grades, better goals, better learning outcomes based on active learning. What I like about this is obviously it's relative to my particular sports course, teaching 16 to 19. This piece of literature was analysing those from ages 15 to 18, which also is a benefit for myself because again, this is evidence-based practice that we're always looking to fulfil. In contrast to that, Freeman et al. Establishes that student achievement is higher and failure rates are lower when students learn under active learning, which is a key factor for my education institutions, because the greater the results achieved from their students, then the greater the reputation of the institute will actually hold, not only financially but economically. So this is pretty much a win-win for everyone.
Chris, what do you feel your responsibilities as a teacher are?
All in line with Carruth 2014, one of the main responsibilities and utmost important is creating that safe and supportive learning environment which I've previously mentioned. Is also making sure there's equality and diversity, adhering to key legislation, regulatory and codes of practice requirements. modelling professional behaviour to inspire learners, upskilling at all opportunities to ensure my own professional development, contributing to a team of professionals in order to improve the experience and achievement of your learners, planning learning activities based on the needs of the group and specific individuals, designing appropriate learning resources that are varied and challenging for my learners, keeping accurate records of individual learners' progresses and future needs, providing learners with appropriate feedback based upon assessment, and then challenge and be critical of my own teaching practice.
Alex, if resources aren't available, how will you manage to remain resilient?
Another good question, to be honest. Like I say, resilience is an important key aspect expected from all teachers. It's understandable that teaching requires resilience. Using one of my past experiences working on a piece of work that I conducted as a PowerPoint to present to a class in a computer room to watch and provide feedback to work that I present. However, things like TVs will not work, computers may not work, so in that sort of situation I have to be resilient and use my intuition as well to give my learners the best outcome. So my idea at that point was to put the PowerPoint on Moodle so that all of the students could access it. I feel that resilience is one of the most important key aspects of a teacher's philosophy as well. The adaptations and changes that are made in your teaching environment. A recent study by Wint 2013 used 300 teachers to analyse their resilience over 3 different phases, both early, middle and late in their career. Over that 3-year period, what was found was during the later years, external demands from government policies, school-based factors such as disruptive pupils, behaviour, increased paperwork, heavy workloads and so on, they contributed to the effects of the resilience of the teachers. However, earlier work from Day et al. 2006 demonstrates teachers felt under considerable pressure connected to the factors such as leaders and colleagues and deteriorating pupil behaviour, lack of parental support, effects of government policies and unanticipated life events, of course, which led to the weakening of their core commitment and educational values. Therefore, for me, to maintain resilience, I must keep up to date, which could be through CPD or observations of other teachers, which can inspire my new approaches to my lessons and give me new adaptations in lesson plans that I can incorporate into my lessons.
How is teaching going, Chris?
Well, at the moment I've had the opportunity to teach a number of lessons. Just earlier today I had a lesson on performance enhancing drugs, and I got the learners debating, which was one of the key points that I wanted to try and get across. They were debating on whether drugs should be allowed in sport, shouldn't be allowed in sport, and then the ethics to go with it. Because they were saying if the drugs are allowed in sport, then there needs to be a fair playing ground with everyone being able to take them. But then what happens when the athletes who want to stay natural and want to still compete come into play? Well, then that's where you think you need to bring in dual Olympics, where there's one for the people who want to take the performance enhancing drugs and then the ones who want to stay natural. It was absolutely fantastic to see the students stay engaged. It's not all been brilliant. There has been moments where, especially behaviour management and boredom in the learners tended to kick in. So this is what leads me on to my point of how can I improve my teaching. I want to introduce a lot more self-centred learning. This is when compared against normal learning or normal teaching with the conventional teaching, this is one main difference between them. One is allowing the students to have the control of self-directed learning, while the latter is putting the responsibility on lecturers to plan the session and giving instructions to students. If I let the students choose what subjects they want to do, then they might be a little bit more engaged. But with it being in a college environment and with a scheme of work to still meet, it could get a little difficult, but this is something I want to implement in the future.
Alex, how do you consider yourself the right candidate for a teaching role?
Well, to understand, to be the right candidate for the teaching role, I've got to understand what teaching roles are. Obviously, I know teaching roles that include safeguarding my children, engaging my learners, health and well-being, promoting British values, embedding my English, my maths, my technology. I have to consider all of these factors into my learning, of course. With my educational background in sports science, I have a bachelor's in sports science already. I've studied at BTEC level, of course, so I understand where my learners are actually coming from. I actually empathise with my learners. I've played, officiated, and worked in the medical team for many years. And with vast knowledge in anatomy, physiology, pathology, understanding how the body functions, particularly during exercise and during injury, I feel that being a previous student who can empathise with my learners and understanding the possibilities they actually have to fulfil careers in sport, that actually drives me and motivates me as a teacher. The areas I will have to work on for myself is planning and delivering lessons at level 2 and level 3. I feel that having such a vast experience in learning at my level, at level 6 and 7, I have to understand how to break that down to a level 2 and level 3 learner, for them to understand what it is I'm trying to get across to them, whether it's physiology or biomechanics. I have to break that down to a level 2 or level 3 learner for them to get the best out of the lesson.
Okay, that was great. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your questions. Thank you.